We'll start in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we oppose the prevalence of the believe all women narrative inside the MeToo movement. The metric for how we'll win this debate is in what world, which world is better for both feminism in general and the MeToo movement in particular. And we'll win using the cases, the backlash that we'll get from the public, and also the media attention on wrongful suits and how it will affect the movement as a whole. Let's first start by defining our world, how the actual Me Too movement works in our world. We think that in our world, and in both worlds actually, not immediately believing a claim does not mean that there is no compassion, that there's no compassion or comforting to the victim who claims that they're a victim. In both worlds, we think that if a woman claims that she has been sexually harassed or raped, we can do both, comfort her and also not immediately believe her claim and wait for the day in court for her to prove her claim. We don't think those two are mutually exclusive, that we can only do one or the other. We can see that in the world when someone claims that they've been sexually abused, you immediately comfort her, but also wait to see the evidence in court. Okay, so the first one is the backlash that we'll get from the public on this movement. Okay, we think that the vast majority of the public support sexual assault and rape victims, and we think that in this world afterwards they will support it less. We think we can divide the public into basically 3 sectors: the hardcore, believe all women, Me Too movements. I think in both worlds those 2 people would be in favor of the Me Too movements. And then we think there's also a particular group of people who are ambivalent to the cause. They don't really think about it that much. They're not against or for it. They're just kind of neutral on it. We think those are the people that in the world of the opposition we will lose support for the movement. And we think there's also a class of people who are actively antagonistic to this movement. We also think that in both worlds they will not change. They will be antagonistic no matter what. So we think the group we're actually fighting about is those people who who are ambivalent to the cause, who don't think about it every day, who don't go actively campaign or do stuff for the cause. Okay, so let's see how this backlash from the public will be expressed. Okay, so men in particular will feel discriminated against, right? They'll see that they're being treated differently as victims from any other victim inside society. Because in this society we have innocent until proven guilty. And in this particular case, these men are immediately assumed guilty. And no matter whether they've done it or not, they think that they've been prosecuted in a different way than every other person in society. Now we think that if they were ambivalent, they feel that they're being wrongly discriminated against, and if they were actively antagonistic against it, it'll give them some material, some claims that they will see that feminism is actually women's superiority, and it will give them some fodder to actually use in their cases against feminism. Yes, I'll take you away.
If they are just like any other victims, why do you think that the Me Too movement was created at all? Because there are many other victims.
We think that the Me Too movement was created because there was a prevalence of women not talking about sexual assault and rape inside. It started as inside the Hollywood, basically. But we think that we think the movement is good, but we think that the prevalence of the narrative "believe all women" is bad. All right, that's what we'll prove. Okay. We also think that a second backlash is that it will give credence to people who are actually accused as offenders, who were accused as sexual assault perpetrators or rapists, and they will say they were being witch hunted by the Me Too movement, by the Believe All Women movement. They might even get some sympathy from men who are either ambivalent or actively against the Me Too movement. And we think it will just give them credence to their claims, which in our world won't have gotten credences at all. Okay, I'll go to the second point, which is wrongful suits in opposition's world. Okay, so in both worlds there are wrongful suits, right? We know that people lie. Both men and women either lie or misunderstand the fact or misunderstand what happened in reality. And that's why we have the court system, right? You go to the court and you see who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. we think that in opposition's world, the lie of someone who is doing a wrongful suit in the guise of believe all women, of the MeToo movement, is much bigger and is very antagonistic to the movement itself. Why? The MeToo movement is huge and it's popular in both worlds. People know about it, people heard about it, people have different feelings about it, right? And if we take it, and if there's a wrongful suit under the guise of the MeToo movement and the believe all women narrative, it will get much more coverage in the news. It will get much more sympathy from victims around the world, and they will get covered in a much wider way than in our world, where it's just a wrongful suit, a normal wrongful suit like any other in the justice system. Okay, so we think that the news cover will be huge. We saw this in, for example, the Amber Heard trial. We saw this in the Hollywood trials and in all the trials against big CEOs in tech. God damn it. How much time do I have?
1:15.
Cool. We see in this. All right, and now because the MeToo movement is deeply associated with the believe all women narrative, with the believe all women narrative, it will hurt the movement because it is so much it's so predicated on the fact that on the believe all women narrative. Once we've proven this narrative to be false in court, and because this narrative is the basis for the MeToo movement in opposition to world, it will give people the impression that the whole movement is false. Right? It will give people who were skeptical of the movement to begin with, who are ambivalent to the movement to begin with, it will give them evidence that the movement is wrong, because here there's this huge case that was predicated, that was the basis for the MeToo movement with the believe all women narrative, and it's being proven false in court, just like we saw in the Amber Heard trial. Okay, so how will this impact? One is that it will just create less supporters for the MeToo movement, which is a vital movement which we need in this world, and two, it will make people actually believe women less. In the future suits, in the future accusations, people will just say, oh, this is just a part of the believe all women narrative. And we saw this to be false in past accusations, and it's false right now, even though it might be true this time. So we think the impacts are less supporters for the MeToo movement, and also less beliefs for future victims of sexual assault and rape. Thank you.
I thank the Prime Minister for that speech, and I'm happy to call on the Leader of Opposition. Hear, hear.
First, why it's going to make women fear of going forward with the trial. Second point, why only a few women actually lie. Okay, so first about what we heard. We heard a claim about backlash. And yet we need to understand that the main people that they talk about are men. And those men still have families. They have women in their lives, they have their wives, mothers, and so on. And just as much as they maybe feel that they will be harassed by some women, they know that it's really not likely to happen. And what it is likely is that when half of each of the women are actually harassed on a daily basis, then they fear more about their family, the people that they care most about, and therefore they might be just okay with some guilty rich people from Hollywood going to jail because they don't really care about them. They care about their own family who might want to go to Hollywood and actually will be harassed there. And therefore makes no sense. Second point about what the media will speak about, no reply. Okay, so my points. First is why we're actually going to make the women fear of going forward with actually opening an investigation. Because at first we need to understand that even if they are going to complain, they are now in this new world not going to be trusted. Okay, and this is the main difference here. Now they go and they're becoming, okay, well, maybe, I don't know, let's investigate you. And what does investigate you mean? It means that now you're going to be in an investigation room with a male person who probably are going to ask you many questions that you really don't want to hear, like ever, is going to bring out your trauma. The thing that you actually tried to hide until now, that you don't talk about it with anyone, not even with your families or friends. It's so hard for you to even think about it. Nobody actually knows it about you. And now you have to go forward and to release it to the entire public. It is a very hard thing for you to do. It is a huge barrier that in order to pass it, it's not like, I don't know, like that someone stole from you. Oh, well, okay, you just go forward. It's reliving a horrible thing that you do not want to relive. It is the worst thing that can happen to you after it. Also, there are many people, also in the investigation room, that now don't really, they show that they don't believe you. And even if in our world it doesn't happen, but now at least we know that they are going to assume it, at least, by how that it works. But still, in their hearts, they are not going to believe us now, and they are actually probably going to show it to us. And showing it to us during the investigation is more, and even the fear of it, of being in the investigation, is going to make us not wanting to go forward. We need to understand what things we're actually talking about. These are things that are hard to prove. It's hard for me to actually say, okay, this is actually a photo of him harassing me. It's very hard for me to do it, and therefore I even think that I might not be able to prove it when I'm in court, and therefore it makes me so fearful of going forward. And I know that without those claims, that I will never have them, and most of the women are never going to even have them, they will not come forward. Let's talk about the treatment of their family and friends. Until now that they came forward, the family and friends saw them just as equal to anyone, just as a normal person walking around, living their normal life, and from now on, they are the person who opened the investigation, who is now maybe even in the media being covered, and everyone talks, oh, well, you know, she just wanted fame. This is what they're going to talk about. They're not going to doubt her, always, instead of just saying, okay, we believe you. And this confrontation, it's not really something that's going to change anything. We're just saying, okay, well, you might have been hurt, I don't know. No, this is less, a lot less than what we are talking about. So, how actually, what actually we're talking about here, the conclusion is that this is the only thing that's going to actually make them coming forward with their investigation, and this is extremely important for us to stop this from keeping happening. Closing, do you have an extension? No, opening?
After
The family of a victim would believe their daughter or mother no matter what, in both worlds. We're talking about the belief from the general public.
And the general public, I will not reply to it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, why only a few women actually lie? First, we need to understand the interests of both sides. Those who don't lie have actually been in something that's life-changing for them. It's a horrible feeling that they have, and they have a lot of less interest now. And this is something that we have already analyzed. But what about those women that actually lie? What is their interest to do it? They might get some money, I don't know. They need to actually tell us why. But the likely thing is what they are actually in fear of here. They're now going to be told if they're actually proven wrong, which is probably the case, because as we said before, it's very hard to prove that someone did it. And therefore, when the case will be ended, the judgment, they will now be told as anyone as liar. They will now know that they have heard the movement. No, they will know that everyone hates them, their friends hate them, all of their friends, all of their social life is probably full of women who are now going to tell them, look what you did to our cause. This is a global women's cause, and you hurt it. Which same human will actually do it? So little women are actually going to be in this group. It makes no sense to be there. So the likely case is, let's say, for example, a woman that says, I want to hurt this person specifically. You might say this. Okay, so wait, what person specifically is this? This is probably going to be a strong person, right? Because you want to make him fall. Please notice that it's still very good to even bring the attention to this strong person, because that if this is a strong person, then, well, it might be great for the public to be aware that this is a society where it actually hurts women in such a way that they feel they need to do it. Also, it's not likely that she will do it, because she feels being like the girl who cried wolf. She does not want that this biggest enemy, who probably did something so horrible to her, is now going to have a free pass, that for every next time that someone is going to go against him, now they're going to be told, well, it's just another one, like the last one that came here and just told us a lot of smearing about this person. So now she is afraid of making society as a whole dismiss claims about the person that she hates most, and she probably knows that they will come because that she hates him, and she knows that it might be a real thing. All in all, what we are talking about here is the fact that so many women are actually going to lie, and therefore the weight of what we told you before about the women who are now have a fear of going forward and to make a testimony is going to outweigh by so many factors the idea of a small group of people who might, in a very, very specific, they need to analyze something here, going to that.
I thank the Leader of Opposition. I'm happy to call on the Deputy Prime Minister.
Okay, okay, are you ready? Wait a second. Yeah, can I start? Okay, I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Look, pretty much all of my cases are going to be kind of rebuttals, so I'm not going to do it outside of my cases, and I'm going to get to them right now. Only a small thing we have to tell you before. Look, the Leader of Opposition tells for a very long time how small the amount of people who will falsely accuse someone is. What we're saying is this: no matter how small the amount is, it doesn't matter for the news and for the coverage. Okay, we're saying that it's enough for it to be one time a year. Okay, for Fox News to be able to show clips of it again and again every time they talk about the MeToo movement. We're saying that one time a year, which is likely because even if you find one psychotic woman which is likely because there are many women around the world, enough one that will false accuse to be able to put a stain on the whole MeToo movement. Because the news will find it interesting, because it's now against the main agenda which is being shown by the MeToo movement. A small radical group will find it interesting, because now it's against, it helps them to ram the idea of the MeToo. We're saying that every time that a celebrity will get accused, he will use that idea and this specific example to show how the MeToo is just falsely doing like a witch hunt on people like him. Okay, they will use it to create sympathy for the wrong people in the situation. Okay, they will create it to create a narrative in which the real victim isn't the woman, but the person who is being accused. And we're saying that how we know it will happen, we already see it. Okay, we see what happened now after Amber Heard. We see it happen even before it, and we see that this idea of people being falsely accused is running again and again, and being shown again and again as an example against the MeToo movement. Okay, now let's talk a bit about why we're saying that anyway will be. Okay, I'll start with that. Okay, we're saying we're going to answer already the question which is being asked by second opposition, and we'll explain why people do accuse and talk about their sexual harassment, and why it happens, and why it has nothing to do with automatic belief in them. Okay, we're saying this. And talking about sexual assault is a horrible experience in both worlds. Okay, you're being looked at as a victim, which is already not very nice thing to be. If you're going to court, you're going through a horrible experience, and so on. Okay, we're saying that anyway you're being looked at from anyway as a victim. You have to tell your family, you have to tell your friend, you have to talk about a very unpleasant experience by someone which is not nice to talk about. We're saying the belief in you is not the main thing which makes you do it. We're saying the main reason you're doing it is because you have a need to talk about it as a part of your healing session from this idea. All time it stays like a secret on you and stays only for you and yourself. It creates a hole in your heart and deeply consume, in a way, consume your mental health. Okay, it creates the distinct fear of being a secret, and it haunts you again and again because you think you cannot be defended from it, because you cannot be because the society doesn't know, and it can't help you. You're afraid to meet this person again, and that no one will believe you if you say, and that no one will, and that now you won't be able to talk to them, and that no one will know what happened to you. We're saying that this is the main reason you talk. We're saying that, and now second second opposition will say why the MeToo was created, okay? What we're saying is this, okay? The MeToo was created because social norms have changed drastically during the last years, okay? We're saying that up until not too long ago, the public idea of what is the woman's right to her body and to her sexualization wasn't as prevalent as today. We're saying that this change, not now, we're saying that the MeToo movement was bound to happen in order to create like a new start which corrects the harms of the past, to create a new social norm which is unified across all society, across different parts of our society. And we're saying more than it, the reason the MeToo movement was so successful is because it created recognition. Okay, until the MeToo movement, every woman found herself alone in this idea. She thought she was the only one who passed this experience. She was the only one who had it. We're saying that the idea of the MeToo movement was at all not about auto belief. It was about giving the women an example of other women who did the same, or the same thing happened to them. Me too. I've seen it happening to me too. And you've done nothing wrong that made it happen to you. You're not you didn't dress too shortly, or you didn't do anything, or you didn't flirt by mistake. Okay, you were harmed, and a lot of other women get harmed. You don't have to be shy of it. You don't have to be ashamed of it. You have to talk about it because it's normal. Because it's not normal, but it's a horrible thing that happens to a lot of people, and you should be. And it's totally okay that it happened to you. You're normal. You can go out with it, and it will be okay. Second part, if you have anything you want to say.
Yes. What do you think women who've been through this sort of trauma needs
okay.
afterwards?
About it. First thing they need is recognition. Okay, they need other people around them to be to know of their trauma. And what we're saying is this, because this is my next point, and it's good you go tell me this. We're saying that people, in a way, already auto-believe victims of anything. Okay, we're saying that when someone tells me he's being harmed in any way, okay, he's being shouted at, he's gone through any horrible experience, he's been something bad happened to him, my automatic feeling is of sympathy for him. Okay, especially if we're saying he passed through such a bad thing as rape. We're saying that the idea of that someone who tells me a horrible story is talking the truth is already embedded in us as a society. We don't need the MeToo movement to say it itself, because when the MeToo says it explicitly, it creates itself harm, as Omer explained to you. What we're saying is that the idea you believe a woman, which tells you she's been raped, will happen in both worlds. Okay, we're saying that the impact of this message doesn't happen as opening of a vision interview, but it's already enough. We're saying that when someone cries and tell me how horrible the experience has been, when someone tells me how he's been attacked, in no word, not in ours and not in the other side house, he will be automatically attacked or will be doubted easily. We're saying that we will need a very, very specific reason to doubt someone like that, and we're saying that saying the message explicitly creates many harms, it creates backlashes, and it creates distrust in the movement. Thank you very much.
Thank the Deputy Prime Minister. And to conclude the first half of this debate, I'm happy to call on the Deputy Leader of
the first actual woman to talk about this. The only woman in the only woman to talk about it.
Okay, I'm beginning in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so it seems that what we've heard from opening government is that we oppose to believing all women, but we really believe all women anyway. No, we don't believe all women anyway. The main problem we have in our reality today is that women don't have proof. Women who remember back to crimes that happened many years ago. Women who have had strange incidents with their boss that really weren't enough to really sue him or take him to the police over it, and never spoke about it, just don't speak. And when they do, we don't believe them because we say they have alternative motives. So really, opening government does not refer to all cases when women simply don't talk. They say, oh, but they'll talk about it with their friends. They'll talk about it with their families. No, in many cases, women never talk about what happened to them at all. I'm going to talk more about it in my points. I'm going to first talk about how women don't talk and how talking changes the lives of women and prevents those harassments in the future. And also how it doesn't really hurt the credibility of the movement if there are some women who lie. But first of all, let's just refer to specific part that they said. What we hear from, we have heard from opening government that it will make men not support women's issues, and we say, yeah, we think some men who care about their wives, who care about their daughters, or are just decent human beings are going to support the movement anyway. But even if they don't support it, what's important in this debate is that the women who have gone through something horrible will talk about it, which will make the harassers responsible for it in the future. Okay, so why women don't speak about those things? So first of all, why do women not talk about their harassment? In many cases, women take the guilt for the harassment on themselves. We know it from many descriptions of rape that victims talk about, even if it makes no sense, because it was such a painful experience, because it was so traumatizing, because there is so much taboo about this subject in the society, the victims really start to doubt themselves. Was I really sending any sexual messages, even if I didn't need to? Was I really wearing a short skirt that was inappropriate for the work environment? Was I reading the room wrong and really he didn't mean to say what he meant? Was I just interpreting the situation in a way that a normal person wouldn't? And that's where they need the most help, because in many cases the person that harassed them is stronger than them. He's maybe a producer in charge of their jobs, an agent, a leader of some, or a boss of some sort. And they need to be believed. They need to feel that someone will really take their word, even when there is no proof. But more than that, there is an accumulative effect when we talk about sexual harassment, because there are so many cases where the area is gray and they're not sure about it. But when the first woman speaks, the second goes up and says, I've had the same experience, and then the third, then the fourth. And in many cases where men or women who harass do it over a long period of time, they never cross the line very, very explicitly, or maybe if they do, they have very strong threats over the women that they harass, and only when women feel like they're going to be believed is the first woman gonna come up and say what happened to her. So that's something that we really don't get if we oppose this narrative. The reason that this narrative is so central to the MeToo movement is that without it, the MeToo movement simply does not exist. Opening government tried to tell you that, yeah, they'll just talk about it to their friends, they'll talk about it anyway, the MeToo movement will still exist. But the MeToo movement is really for those cases that there is no obvious way of proving that they happened. And only many women talking about it is going to prove it. Yes, second half.
Yeah, we are a few years into the MeToo movement. How do you think that men behavior has changed towards the women? Because we think that the men are now more cautious and not approaching women because of that assumption.
Yeah, I'll be very glad to accept that men are more cautious and that they don't harass. I think it doesn't harm the amount of people who, start romantic relationships. I'm not sure that it really harms anything but the things that we really want to oppose. No. Okay, so how does it not hurt the credibility of the entire movement if there are some lies? So as my partner has said before, lying women are perceived as a threat to the movement. As a whole, as a rule, women are very, very, very angry at women who try to take advantage of this, and therefore we think that in cases where it's obvious that a woman has lied, powerful people and women are going to speak out publicly against her, making it known to women that it really makes that they have nothing to gain from it, and they're going to be harmed in the future. But even if there are some women who lie, again, we're really trying to impact the women who are going to talk, and the stories of women who have gone through harassment are so touching. They're so painful to hear. It's so enraging for human beings to hear of someone who was innocent, someone who had no power, being taken advantage of. And we think that the emotional impact of those stories really live on, and they make their own impact regardless of whether there are some lies that are being told. Even if some men are not guilty, we think that really women who are not very mentally healthy are going to do it, and men are already protected by the general public. If they're very famous and they have power, they have good lawyers, people really tend to defend men more. So they really don't need this help. The ones who need the help are the ones who don't have got it today. Thank you.
And I will start from 3, 2. Okay, we've been in that debate, and we spoke about like the justice for the women, and if we are weakening or strengthening the woman power inside the world, and everything. Okay. First of all, I want to repeat what my partner said. Yes, we agree that women should have the place that someone will hear them and everything. But we understand at the end of the day that the MeToo movement wants to help and promote women in all places. Yes, the MeToo movement was started as someone that will give a room for women to complain and to say that they were being harassed. And yes, we still agree that most of the women are not lying. But at the end of the day, we want to address just the assumption that the women are always right to begin with. Okay? Because at the end of the day, I think the whole debate is around we want to improve the women's life in our world because we are aware that the women are important because they are 50% of the population and they want to be equal. Okay, they want to be treated. They don't want to be looked if they are saying something or accusing something. They want to be equal. Okay, so we are saying that this specific assumption that all women are right when they are accusing someone about rape, about harassment, or about something like that, at the end of the day, hurting women. Okay, because, and now I will elaborate and say. And I say why. Okay, but first, I want to address and talk about what the debate was all about. First of all, the first government said that we will discriminate other victims because why only women and this and that and not murder and not address everything as correctly. We don't see that as much of a difference. And the loss of not guilty until proven otherwise accusation, we are agree to that. We have no problem with it, even helping us. From the first opposition we are getting that women will fear to go to trial because of all of the pressure that they are being through. Yes, they are afraid, but the MeToo movement started to help them and push them. And because at the end of the day, it's not about the assumption that we are talking about. We are talking about a support, a system that will help women to be together and support one another. We don't need that assumption because at the end of the day, it will hurt. The assumption will hurt the women in the workplace or in the world. Because unfortunately, still the higher management and stuff like that are majority men. And from the second opposition, we are getting some sort of consent and about the pressure of consent or something like that, if it's not aware and people are close to you, so you will be afraid to speak, so you need... No, yet again, we don't need that assumption. We just need someone to support, maybe women's circles, that they will speak and from that they will get their strength. Okay, because at the end of the day, I will remind you that we are also agreeing that the majority of the women are not lying. They just need to support to go to the trial. And let me go to my main point, but first opposition, PY.
Yes, CG ignore the fact that there's public pressure on organizations to hire women, while sidetracking that this is life-saving to believe women.
Excellent, exactly my point. Yes, there is the pressure of hiring women, but we are talking about what happened inside the workplace. When you are working with a guy, but you are getting a cold shoulder because you need help from him, but at the end of the day you will say, listen, I want to be a good man, because I believe that the majority of the guys don't want to mistreat women. I would never want to make women feel uncomfortable or harass her in some way. And the privilege, that the assumption that all women are always right, make me fear. And I know that other men will be frightened to approach women because the boundaries are getting a bit stretched. Nowadays, you don't know the difference between compliment or, I don't know, some sort of assumption because the other side is the one that receiving it. You are saying something, but the other one, he's the one that process that in his brain and decide what it's mean. You know, I can come from a good place, but someone else with a different cultural behavior will get it somewhere else. So, what we want to say, we want to talk about impacts. Okay, we believe that at the end of the day, the MeToo movement is all about creating women stronger and make them be more aware and give them a place to say their trouble and talk about their harassment, about their rape and everything. But the assumption that the women are always right will eventually hurt them because the men at the workplace will get far from them. And at the end of the day, in today's world, you cannot work without collaboration. We need to work together. So you will have women that are working together on one side, men are working together on the other side. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, this is the situation. The higher management and they are usually majority men. So we are hurting the promotion of the women and to get to the full equality that we want because of that assumption. So, yes, last minute.
When there are much longer persecutions to all cases, we would get much less edge cases being slipped away, much less people, offenders repeating, and then your impacts are minority.
Okay, I get what you're saying. I understand that. But at the end of the day, we can do that with the support, okay? We can do a circle of women support to help them during that trial, to help someone like a lawyer, social worker that will go to the trial with them, or something like that. But this assumption at the end of the day will hurt all of the women. And yes, we want an equal role. And at the end of the day, we believe that assumption is hurting that. We want the women and the men in that world to feel good, to be free in their workplace. We want everyone to be together, that the board of directors will be 50% men and 50% women. But that assumption at the current power status will not change because the higher management will be afraid that someone would say something about that. Because this assumption that they are always right will at the moment it's a double-edged knife, and we want to oppose that. Thank you very much.
I thank the government whip, and I'm happy to call on the opposition whip to include all players in this debate as a whole.
I think there are two questions in this debate. One is whether we trust women more or less after due to this narrative, and the second one is where do we get more justice for those women. let's begin. I think all of the engagement will be integrated. Let's start with the trust from women, because OO brings the following claim. Because they say false claim get more media coverage, therefore we will think this narrative is false, and therefore MeToo will lose support, all support from everyone. A few responses to that. First of all, we don't agree that media specifically cover more false claims. We think that the case, even the cases they're speaking about, is about people who are in powerful positions, people who are famous, people who are known for. We think many of them, most of the time, don't even get to the place when these accusations are coming forward, because they have so much power and so much resources to silence these women. And therefore, we think if these cases are coming forward, it means there is a lot of evidence and a lot of women. And therefore these cases are that get the media attention are probably have some sort of truth behind that. And there is tons of examples of that, like big corporation leaders, Kevin Spacey, and other sort of that. We really don't understand why false claims get more media attention. The second problem we have with the false claims, and it also answers the CG, is that they didn't analyze why there will be more or less false claims after this motion. They only analyze false claim is a thing that happened, and therefore there is this narrative that now we won't believe it. Now listen, false accusation, therefore even they seems to agree, happens on both sides in somewhat extent. We really don't think it's such a big deal. We think we really think it's probably like a very small proportion of the cases. But what it means on their side, without this motion, is that when these false claims occur, if they get this media attention in all this backlash, the claims that say women are a fault, the claims that don't support women, the narratives that don't believe women are only getting stronger. On our side, there is a competitive narrative. On our side, there are other people who are pushing back against those claims from these men who anyway they even seem to think that there isn't evidence and the women are not just. And thirdly, we really don't understand why it takes support from all the MeToo movement. We think that most men are somewhat allies to the movement, and we really don't think that one claim from the media is the thing that's going to take all their support. Let's talk about what we give you, and I want to point out why we think we are stronger than OO. Because OO talks about why more women will now come forward and feel more comfortable. The problem with that is that they didn't analyze why coming forward will mean more justice and actually a strong impact for these women. And here we come. So let's move to the second thing, because in the justice clash, both government kind of ignores the fact that now more women feel comfortable in coming forward. We analyze and give alternative mechanism. Therefore, we are separate from OO. We have the same bottom line. But now what OR gives you further, OR tells you why these biases are specifically the thing that harms women into getting the impact in the justice line. And we think that if I'm going to organize it, there are two things. Firstly, there is making the legal process much easier. We think that OO talks about, police have a high criteria of evidence, and women now have to deal with the trauma. But OR here explains to you that why when women, without this narrative going through the process of the police, it's like being through hell. We think when there is this narrative, and OR talks to you about it, when these women get acknowledgement, we think the question that targets women, like asking them, what did you dress, or did you smile or show affection to him, will not exist under our side, because this narrative acknowledge these women. this means that the legal process to which women could complain and get the and going even to the court is much more easier to them and will deter them less, because now they face much more support from the legal. There is inside the changes in the legal system that show them more credibility. The second thing that Or tells you about is that support and pressure from the society. But first of all, let's take CG.
Okay, they feel more comfortable complaining because of MeToo as a whole, but we say believe all women sticks them because men are like, oh, you are automatically correct.
Okay, we think the problem with your case that without this we believe women is that you're not very comparative and you didn't understand and you didn't analyze why without this narrative men suddenly believe women. We think that that we give you certain reasons that men won't believe women without this narrative. They don't see it from for themselves. They think of themselves as good people. They don't have awareness and they don't even know that these things happen. And thirdly, men just don't like to be persecuted, and you didn't analyze why without this narrative suddenly people will believe women. So let's go on to the second impact, and I'll make it quick, the support from society. We think here, when women come forward and share their stories, first of all, they get others, people, support networks and other people who they feel comfortable talking to. And second of all, we have deterrence and support from the support and pressure from the society towards these men who now will feel, who now needs to be more cautious before making these advancements, more aware, and therefore we get the social impacts, and we are glad to oppose.